woes of the world and how terrible it is that people have the right to be miserable. But they'll order their food, and then they'll ask the waiter, who probably grew up in America and has never even been to China. They'll ask him, how do I say that in Chinese?
Oh, God. Oh, to show that they're in solidarity with the immigrant. I love that.
Then they'll get their chopsticks, and because they'll have to ask for them because the flatware.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's to show that they're politically able to use chopsticks.
Yeah. So then they get out their chopsticks and they rub them together to try to take off all the splinters and everything.
Yes.
I've never actually seen an Asian do that.
Yeah, even though I've never seen a splinter on a chopstick. They heard about it in 1971.
Yeah. And so then, while they're doing this, they're completely oblivious to the fact that there's a table full of staff from the restaurant sitting there and using forks to eat their lunch. Meanwhile, the waiters...
Well, you must live near a university town for this to be going on. These are classic university behaviors.
Exactly. Yeah. And then, on top of that, the waiters, the only reason why they're speaking Chinese is because they're mocking these liberal dummies because they look like little kids because they're dropping food all over themselves and the table and the floor because they don't know how to use the chopsticks.
And the waiters are laughing about them and goofing on them in Chinese.
It makes me so disgusted. It's just disgusting.
Well, but look, Mike, you got to do what the last caller said. You just got to go there and watch the human comedy. I mean, liberals are the most laughable subpopulation in America. They don't understand it, but everyone else is laughing at them. They're social freaks because of their hypocrisy and their childishness.
Yeah, you were talking about how they talk about politics.
But your people over there that lives in Kansas City in a Chinese restaurant, do they generally bow when they walk in? Don't they give a short little bow and their hands together?
I've actually seen that once.
Only once. How about when the waiter gives them a glass of water? Do they all say thank you 50 times for the glass of water?
Oh, yeah, but not only that, they have to have hot oolong tea on a 110-degree August day.
Oh, well, that's appropriate. What about the napkin? When the waiter gives them the napkin, don't they all bow and say thank you 50 times? Oh, thank you. Oh, everything the waiter does, they give them a thank you. And when they pay, they say thank you to the owner of the restaurant. Instead of the owner saying thank you to them for the business, they thank him for letting them in the restaurant. How about that one?
Well, Michael, the last time this happened, it was a date, and this guy was doing it to show off to his date. And at the end of the meal, after having to watch this and listen to his rhetoric and how happy he was about all the politics and everything that's going on, even though he seems to understand politics, but he can't even use a pair of chopsticks. After the meal was done, we both went up to the cashier to get to pay for our meal at the end. And I asked him. He didn't know. He didn't know that I knew the owner, and I've known him for years. But I asked him how he liked the restaurant, and he said, "Oh, it's great." And I said, it used to be smoking, but it's not anymore. And I said, so they didn't actually have to participate in the smoking ban. And I said, it's a good thing that smoking ban finally went through, huh? And he said, yeah, I voted for that. And I was like, yeah, I figured that. Well, I find your speech as offensive as you found people smoke. I don't want to listen to your political rhetoric when I'm eating my meal.
Oh, really? And what did the guy say to that?
He just sat there and stared at me. And I was just like, whatever, paid my meal and went out.
Here's the last question of the day. Ask your friends in the Chinese restaurant what % of the bill is tipped by liberals. What % tip they leave?
Oh, yeah. You know what? I heard you say that once, and I asked them that because I was curious. And, yeah, they're pretty stingy.
Usually libs give a maximum of 8 or 9%. That's if they're not caught, if they don't run out of the restaurant entirely and leave it to somebody else. Yeah. They're the worst tippers in America are the ones who are the most socially progressive. They're the biggest cheats in the country. But that's neither here nor there. We got bigger problems than that. Latest came out is the president, so-called, of Honduras, who the people threw out because he was a bum and a dictator, who Chavez supports, who Obama supports, who Hillary supports, who Castro supports. That president, that man that our president supports, has just been linked to drug ties. Figure it all out. I'll be right back.
These guys are so hilarious. I almost drive off the road every morning.
Armstrong and Getty. Weekday morning 6 to 10. Talk 910 KNEW.
very worrisome on the Savage Nation. Very worrisome. People don't... See, if you have no historical knowledge of communism, you can't understand where we are in America. And I'm afraid that many of the people listening to the show think that it's preposterous to compare what is going on in America today with other, let us say, far-left regimes that became pretty dictatorial. They don't have the context, so they laugh at you if you say, well, he's moving in that direction. That's because they were brainwashed from youth into not comprehending. They were purged. All the books were purged of any references to what communists did, and so therefore they don't even understand the danger they are in. They are the perfect victims, preparing us for the perfect storm. But again, it takes some wisdom for people to understand this. And I can't help people if they were raised in the school systems of America over the last 20 years and don't have any idea what went on, whether it went on in 1917 in Russia or whether it went on in other countries with communist dictatorships. They have no idea that we've had a revolution in America. Obama is leading that revolution. He has co-opted his opposition, first with the form of the billionaires. You could say, well, he didn't co-opt them, they used them. Well, that's exactly how dictatorships emerge. The dictators choose someone, and they think they can control that someone that they choose. Eventually, that someone winds up controlling them, because they usually outsmart the financiers. That's what Hitler did, and that's what many others have done. It hasn't happened here yet, but it will unless you stop it. I'm telling you, there's no... Right now, it just got worse today, by the way, because they took a clown, a totally unqualified clown, and put him into the Senate. A man named Al Franken, who, by the way, did what this guy Bruno did with the character Bruno, which is make mockery of gays. And you well know he'll get a pass for mocking gays because he's a leftist. You can mock gays if you're a leftist, but you can't do any such thing if you're not a radical leftist. Go figure that one out. New York City, Jimmy, I knew that you were going to call. Jimmy, make it quick. Here we go. You're on the Savage Nation.
Yes, I just want to reiterate that the communist movement is a world movement. Now, there's a lot of useful idiots who maybe don't understand what's behind it, but it's a world movement. It's organized. They meet, they write, they coordinate their activities.
All right, so how do you, a man who's been paranoid about the emerging red menace all your life, and rightly so, what do you make of Obama and Hillary Clinton taking the side of Castro and Chavez with regard to the dictator of Honduras?
This actually, I think it's kind of strange that they would be so blatant about it. This should be the signal that Americans understand, if they didn't see before, that the trouble we're in. I mean, there's a connection.
To me, this was the clearest sign yet that we have an overt neo-Marxist leader. The man basically got up. He may as well wave the red flag with a hammer and sickle on it. What do they need to have happen until they recognize who he is?
Well, the American people, we need to do huge numbers of Americans need to do deep study and really learn and understand how Marxists work, the history and the goals, and then be able to
Jimmy, explain to people in 60 seconds or less what the big deal is about communism.
The communist, the world movement, it's a party. It's a movement of a party. A party doesn't need a state to exist. In other words, the Soviet Union collapsed the state but kept the party. They talked about creating a multi-party system all controlled by the communists. If they
I understand, but will the people be worse off or better off under a worldwide communist dictatorship?
It'll probably be mass murder. A world communist movement, any dictatorship would be terrible. Communist, fascist, but the communists have a history. They have
right.
goals.
So I was reading from Mao's book, Out of Mao's Shadow, of what the Red Guards did to quote capitalists in China, what they did to their fellow revolutionaries in China. They killed them and threw them in mass graves. Are you worried about Obama saying he's going to create a civilian national security force bigger than the military? Yeah, of course you are. Well, I am. If it happens, I'm leaving the country. That'll be the signal it's all over. Where you can go, I don't know. I have no idea where you can go. But if Obama gets away with creating the equivalent of Red Guards...
Michael Savage. Afternoons 3 to 7 on Talk 910 KNEW and online at 910KNEW.com.